Hi, I'm Mary Hertel from Made by Marnie, and I design paper piece patterns. If you've never paper pieced before, this is the book for you because so many of the blocks are very easy to do. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks today for paper piecing the blocks in my new book, Sew Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And we're going to use the Rudolph block as our sample because that's the same block I demonstrate in the book. It'll be very easy for you to follow along that way. First, I would make a copy of my pattern. It says on the pattern how many copies I need to make. If it's a simple block, all I need is one copy. If it's a combination block, I'll need more than one, and it will tell you how many. So for Rudolph, I needed 2 copies. I'm going to be sewing right through the paper. That's what paper piecing is. And I'll be creating my block on the back of my paper pattern. Here I have my block all cut out into 3 pieces. That's why I needed more than one copy. So when I cut it, I can add these seam allowances. Now you wouldn't have to do that, but if you need help like I do while I'm sewing, that extra seam allowance helps me remember to keep that on there. I'm now ready to start my first paper piecing step. So I'm going to start with section A, which is the part by his antlers. And for section A, I'll start with number 1. So you can see how easy it is. If you can count, just follow those numbers. And you're going to be sewing all straight lines. That's another nature of paper piecing. Everything is done with straight seams. So basically, if you can sew a straight line and you can count, you'll be able to paper piece. My first piece, I've simply pinned to the back of where that section number 1 is. And that piece is now about a ½ an inch larger than I need the shape to be. Now I'll take my second fabric, and this is a trick that I like to use. I like to use a larger scrap and then whittle my way down until it's all used up. This way I don't have to guess. Should I cut it 3 by 4? Should I cut it 2 by 5? There's no guessing. I like to start with scraps that are about 9 inches by 10 inches to start with, and I'm pinning them together, right sides together, and sometimes I don't even pin, I just place them and sew them. And I'm allowing that seam allowance on the side. And I'm going to use the word stop to help me sew this, S-T-O-P. So I'm going to stitch the line between section 1 and 2 and stitch a little farther on both ends, about a ¼ inch farther on both sides. Then I'm going to trim. So I'll bend this pattern out of the way, and I just take a scissors and trim that seam to about a ¼ of an inch. And then I'm going to open my fabric, so I flip it over to the other side where it now belongs. So now you can see it actually is in place behind that antler, which is section 2. Then I'll just press it into place. Now I have this large piece of fabric, so I can simply move this pattern aside and trim away anything I don't need. But I always leave a good ½ inch seam allowance there just to be safe. That's how I do each section. Once the sections are done, I'm going to combine them. That's why I call it a combination block. Here I have section A and B all paper pieced. It's ready to be combined. I like to use straight pins, and I simply stab the pin in between where the red line ends and match up those seam allowances, and then I sew that, and I've got one part of my reindeer already constructed. I'll just repeat that for every section until my combination block is put together. And then I'm going to trim it up or square it up on my cutting mat. Always be generous with those outside edges. You want to leave more than just the ¼ inch seam allowance around the edge, because as you're piecing, all those seams are kind of eating up your fabric. You'll be sure then to have enough to get your 8 by 8 unfinished block cut at the end. Thanks for sharing this time with me today. Remember to visit me at madebymarnie.com and see my other patterns and books. And try out Sew Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Get us started on those holiday projects now.